This show is produced by the Harwood Podcast Network.
Hey there guys, I'm Cameron Harris. We love making this show available to you free of charge, and you can help us keep it that way by making a contribution to our Karma Jar. To learn more, visit our website. Hey there everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SketchUp, a 3D Toolbox. We are back with a brand new episode in the Kaweah Falls House Model Project. Now, if you don't remember the house that we're working on, this is it. This is the Kaweah Falls house. It is an absolutely gorgeous piece of architecture, and we are working to create a full 3D model of it. Now, in the last few episodes we've made some really good progress. If you look here, this is our model as it stands right now. We've gotten all of the walls, both exterior and interior, drawn and arranged so that it looks, exactly like the floor plan that we have underneath here. So you can see we use this floor plan as a guideline to make all these various buildings, and now we're going to continue working on that. Now, at one point, I believe I said in the last episode, we were going to start working on the doors and the windows, the doorways and the windows. However, that is not what we're going to be doing in this episode. Slight change of plans, because as I was working on the doors and the windows for this episode, I noticed something that was a little bit odd. Things in this model weren't lining up the way they should. By that I mean, walls weren't arranged the way that they should have looked. If you looked at the photos on the gallery of all the various photos of the Kaweah Falls house, things just weren't looking quite right. And I realized that there was a problem with the floor plan. Now, this is very common. Anytime you're building a house in SketchUp based off of a floor plan or photos or really anything, chances are eventually you're going to run into some problems. You'll get, partway through the project and you'll realize, oh, the measurements of this room are a little bit off, the dimensions of this wall aren't quite right, and then you'll have to fix things. That's exactly what we're going to be doing in this episode, because fixing some of the models that we made earlier is actually a big part of working in SketchUp, and it needs you have to think very carefully about it, because you need to figure out how you're going to modify a wall, for example, without affecting anything else that doesn't need to be affected. You can't just start from scratch, or you don't want to start from scratch. So you need to figure out how are you going to keep the ripples of what you're doing to a minimum. So let me show you what I mean by that. So here's the model as we have it right now. It's looking really good, but I'm going to show you one of the biggest issues that we have with the model, and that is this part down here. This little section, this series of rooms right here, was originally drawn over here because it was, if I rotate around so you can see it in the floor plan a little bit. It was drawn on a separate chunk of the floor plan because the floor plan is, of course, in 2D. So what we have here is this is a sort of extra kitchen, bedroom, bath section. And what this does is it goes underneath this second story right here. So what we did was, in one of our previous episodes, we moved this section of the house from here, where we modeled it, to under here, and we lined up the walls so that it looked really good. However, it turns out we made a slight miscalculation, or I made a slight miscalculation, because this isn't exactly where this chunk goes. In fact, I thought that these walls here and here were supposed to line up. That is not the case, however. This little pad that you see extruding out here isn't in fact a porch, it's a screened porch. So it looks like it's basically a finished porch. It's part of the rest of the house. It has walls around it. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically push this section back so that it works that way. Now, normally, if we were to move a big chunk of the house like this could be a fairly big problem, because, moving an entire section of a house while it's connected to the rest of the house could be a little bit tricky. But because we were sort of planning ahead and we've organized our model very nicely, you can see that if I just click on this chunk of room right here, only it is selected because we grouped it ahead of time. So what I could do is I could take the move tool and move it out from underneath this chunk and do whatever I want to with it without it affecting the rest of the house. This is one great example of where grouping is so crucial, and you'll thank yourself for putting the extra time into it later when you have to do something like this. So what we're going to do here to kind of make this line up correctly is I'm going to select the group down here, and I'm going to switch to the Move tool, and I'm going to choose this back wall back here. I'm going to just click anywhere on it. I just want to click on that wall. I'm going to start dragging it out like this, And then as I'm dragging it, I'm going to lock it into the red axis by hitting the right arrow key. So now I can move it just in this direction. And I'm just going to hover my mouse over this wall on the top building part right here. I'm going to click once to snap it in there. So now if I move my camera around here, you can see the back walls are lined up perfectly like this. And then you'll also notice that this pad right here, I'm going to double click on the group to go inside of the group so I can edit it. You'll notice that this pad right here, this part that's sticking out, lines up almost perfectly with the walls up here. And that is actually what we want. So I'm going to switch to the push-pull tool so I can extend this pad out or back. And I'm just going to snap it up to this wall here just to make sure it's absolutely perfect. And you can see down in my distance box, you can see I'm only taking off 2 inches. So we were pretty darn close with the actual modeling of that pad. We just positioned it in the wrong place. So we're going to click there to make sure that those are lined up perfectly. And then because this is a screened-in porch, we need walls. So I'm going to go ahead and select the top face here. And I'm going to do what we did when we were creating walls a few episodes back. And I'm going to use the offset tool to offset this in 6 inches. But if I do that, you'll notice that I'm getting an extra wall towards the back of the house back there, an extra wall against that other wall that's already there, if that makes sense. I don't want that. So rather than creating that wall and then having to go in and remove it later, I'm going to actually be smart about this. And I'm going to select, by shift-clicking, I'm just going to select these 3 exterior lines rather than the entire face. And then I'm going to offset them. And you see when I do that, I'm not getting an extra wall back there because I haven't selected that line. When you select a face and use the offset tool, it offsets the whole shape. But when you just select certain lines and use the offset tool, it only pushes those lines in. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 6 inches. And then I'll use the push-pull tool. Hit the Option key, so I'm pulling up a copy. That way I keep this dividing line down here. And I'm going to pull it up and just snap it up to the top like this. There we go. So you can see now that's going to be our screened-in porch. And I'll go back into the group again, and I'll extend this pad out and snap it up to this top porch part here. And that'll be our real exterior porch. So now you can see that this is lining up perfectly. And this is one of the things you'll notice. If you're doing this on your own, it can be pretty frustrating because you're trying to figure out how all these pieces fit together. But eventually you'll kind of have a brainstorm and you'll realize how it's supposed to fit together and everything just kind of clicks into place. Like when we pushed this room back and then that porch part lined up perfectly with that top wall, everything just kind of clicks into place. Now, let's move on to another section of the house that we need to work on. And that is this area right here. Now this room right here is sort of the kitchen dining room area. And so if you look at this photo, this is what we know that the house looks like. Photos are always the most accurate depictions of what a house looks like. And if we look here, you'll notice that in this photo, you can actually see this kind of sink and window area. Now, that is a wall that's right next to a sort of angled wall. But if we look here, this is what that area looks like in our model. That is not what it looks like in the photo at all. So we need to fix this. This is going to require rearranging some walls because the floor plan, when it was drawn, wasn't quite accurate. So now we need to kind of manipulate it so that it looks like what we know the house actually looks like from the photo. If you look at the photos of the kitchen, you can see one big thing we've got is the countertops. Now the countertops are actually set into the walls a little bit, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take this wall right here. I'm going to go into the group so I can modify it a little bit. This wall right here is where those countertops should be. But if we add countertops, you can see the countertops are going to stick out quite a bit, and they're not going to really allow all that much clearance to walk between here. So we know that this wall needs to actually get pushed back a ways. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take this wall, and we're actually going to set it back 2 foot 8 inches. That's the amount that we need. And so I'm going to switch to the push-pull tool. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this section of the wall and push it back like this. And I'm going to go ahead and type in 2 foot 8. Good. I'm going to do the same thing right here, like that. And now I can take this wall right here and push it back 2'8", like that. There we go. So now you can see what that did for us is that made this chunk of wall right here, it made it a lot bigger. And that's where our sink and countertops and dishwasher, that's where that needs to go. So we're making good progress here. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out how big that wall actually really needs to be. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting because by looking at this photo, you can actually see we have the dishwasher. This is going to be a good point of reference for us because we know that a dishwasher, most dishwashers at least, are a certain width. Because we know that a dishwasher is, let's say, 30 inches, we can kind of look at this model and figure, well, if the dishwasher is 30 inches, this whole wall is this much by looking at it. And that's what I did to kind of figure out how much this wall actually needed to be expanded. And I found out that it needed to be expanded to be about 8'7". So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back in here and I'm actually going to pull out a guideline right here. And I'm going to pull it out like this. And I'm going to type in 8'7". There we go. So this wall right here needs to extend out to meet this line. And if we look here, you can see we've actually got an extra angle. We have the wall where our kitchen sink would normally go. And then we have the wall that extends across the walkway, but we've got this extra angle right here. Now this wall was in the floor plan, but we know that by looking at the photos, it doesn't exist. This is a pretty big difference, and it's going to take a little bit of work to kind of finesse the wrinkles out of this. We know that this wall can extend out, but it can't be moved. This wall, therefore, it needs to actually come forward to meet this wall right here, right? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of what we don't need. So we know that this weird angled wall here, we don't need it. It doesn't exist in the house. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a couple lines right here just to kind of separate these chunks of walls. I'm going to use the push-pull tool, and I'm going to push it down and out of existence, right? So that's good. Now, we know that this wall right here needs to extend over to this guideline right here. So I'm going to take my line tool and I'm going to draw a line, snap it to the green axis, and we'll draw this line right to there, right to that guideline, because we know that's where this wall and our other wall need to meet. So we'll draw a line there. And then I'm actually going to get rid of this extra line here. That's from our non-existent wall that we don't need. I'm going to draw another line out here so that we keep this wall at 6 inches thick. And I'll line it up like that. And then I'll take this chunk and extend it up. So here's our extension of that wall. I can go ahead and use the eraser tool and get rid of these extra lines here. And there should be some on the other side as well. Yep, there's one. Okay, good. So now we've got that. So that's perfect. Now what we need to do is we need to take this wall and extend it out so that it can meet with that other wall. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take the push-pull tool. I'm going to pull it forward. And I'm going to snap it to this chunk of the wall right here. That way we know that they're coming forward to the exact same point. Now I'm going to use the push-pull tool again. And I'm going to take this big block here. This is actually our wall. We're going to shrink it down later so that it lines up. And we'll extend it out like this. And let's say our offset is limited. So if you ever see this thing where it says offset is limited to a certain whatever amount it is, that means that there's some kind of weird angle going on that's preventing that block from expanding. But there's an easy way to bypass that. Hit the Option key and use the push-pull tool. That should get rid of any weird offset problems you're having because it's extending a copy. We're going to extend this out and line it up with this wall right there. There we go. And now I'll go ahead and get rid of these extra line segments here. And this weird little angle right here is probably what was causing our problem. So let's go ahead and fill that in. And we'll go like that and extend that part up. This is the easiest way to kind of fix weird little angles. Just fill in the shape down at the bottom and pull it up and merge it with your main wall. There we go. That looks good. So now we're going to start shrinking this wall back down because we know that this wall needs to be 6 inches thick. So I'm going to take the tape measure tool and I'm going to draw a guideline out from this wall here and go 6 inches. And you can see that guideline lines up with this wall right here perfectly. So what I'm going to take now is the push-pull tool. I'm going to start back here and I'm going to push this wall back to that 6-inch guideline right there. And then do the same thing with this. Okay, now this wall, you can see, isn't really letting me do that because I've got these weird shapes kind of intersecting with each other here. So we'll just do this manually with the line tool. I'll just draw the line myself like this. There we go. And now I'll use the eraser tool. Actually, I need another line here to keep this wall. I'll extend this wall out like this, right? And it's filled in a shape here. I'll just get rid of that shape. And there we go. And now I can just use the eraser tool and get rid of these extra junk lines out here with all these weird shapes that I no longer need. There we go. And now I just need to draw a couple extra lines down at the bottom to line up with my walls. Because you can see we're missing lines out here, so faces can't pop into existence. So I'll take a line from this corner up here and just draw it down like that. Draw it out like that, and back like that. Good. And now I can use the push-pull tool on this weird chunk right here. This is left over from our ghost wall that shouldn't be there. Push that back down like that. There we go. Beautiful. This wall right here is where our sink and dishwasher are going to go. You can see now, looks a lot more like the photo, doesn't it? So now we'll be able to put a window and a dishwasher and a sink there, and we'll have plenty of space. Now the only other thing we need is we need an extra little bit of wall to come out from this corner right here. Because if you imagine, let me show you what I'm talking about. If I just draw a quick little rectangle here, if we imagine these represent our countertops, you can see that there's going to be a wall right here that kind of contains them, you might say. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the cabinets there. So now what we're going to do is we know that this guideline is where our cabinets are going to stop. So I'm going to go back into the group, take that guideline, I'm going to draw another guideline out like this, and I'm going to go 4.5 inches. That's our standard width for an interior wall. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some lines. So I'm going to take a line here, I'm going to draw it out, make it 28 inches like that. Good. And then I'll extend it over to this other guideline here and draw it back like that. And then I'll take that and push it up. There we go. Perfect. So now you can see, if you look at this, this is really looking a lot like the kitchen, a lot more like the kitchen that we know from the photos. So we're making good progress here. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to work on this area over here, because this is kind of more in the living room area. Now the first thing we're going to do is that we know that this room right here, this is a bathroom. But this bathroom, you can see it's wider than it is long. Now that's not necessarily a problem, except that that's not what the room actually is. The room is actually much longer than it is in this model. So the floor plan wasn't quite accurate with the dimensions of that room. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix that. We're going to use the push-pull tool on this wall here, and we're going to pull it out 2 feet, and then we're going to go back into here, and we'll take the other side of the wall and we'll push it in 2 feet. That's the easiest way to move the position of walls in SketchUp when you're working with a house that's already built, is just do that 2-step thing. Take one side and pull it out so that it's thicker than it would be, and then take the other side and push it in so that it's back to its normal width. That's very easy to do because that doesn't affect any other walls usually. So now we've got that wall extended out. So we got this wall right here. But we also know, based on this photo, that we've got this extra little wall in the living room. And you can see that on the left side of that wall, there's a little cabinet. If you go through that little nook, there is actually a small hidden door in a little alcove back there. You can't see it in the photo, but it is there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add that alcove. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little chunk of wall right here, and I'm going to use the push-pull tool, and I'm going to pull it out 3 feet, because that's how much space the alcove has back here. Now I'm going to use the push-pull tool again But this time I'm going to hit the Option key, and I'm going to use it on the same chunk of wall, but I'm going to extrude a copy out 9 inches, like that. Now here's why I'm going to do that. Because I have this copy, I can pull this chunk out like this. This is going to be part of that wall that I was talking about. Now I don't know how long exactly I need this wall section to be, but I do know that I need to leave an opening right here that's about 5 feet wide. So I'm going to use a guideline right there, and I know that I need this wall. I'll use the push-pull tool on it like this. I'm going to pull it out to match right there. Perfect. So that's one part of the wall, but there's another part of this. You notice if we look at the photo, this wall isn't quite wide enough, and that's because if we look in the model right here, we're going to have a bunch of extra cabinets and appliances right here. Right? So if we imagine that this is some more cabinets and a fridge and all that stuff, you'll notice that like this, they're just kind of open. You can see them if you look at them through the living room. We know that is not the case. So this wall is actually going to extend out a little bit more to cover them. So let's go ahead and do that. This wall does not need to be 9 inches. This wall does because because of an aesthetic reason. That way when you round the corner here, it's not just a really thin wall. But it does need to be a thin wall over here. So this line we have here, the 9-inch guideline, that's not what we want. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm actually going to pull a guideline out 4.5 inches like that, and then I'm going to select that line and use the Move tool to move it over like this, right? So then I can use the Push-Pull tool and pull out a 4.5-inch thick wall instead of a 9-inch thick wall. And I'm going to pull it out same that we did on the other wall over here. I'm going to do 28 inches. There we go. And now that wall is looking a lot more like it does in the photo. And we've got a nice little alcove right here. We've got a little extra line right here that I'm going to erase. That way we keep the tops of all our walls pretty seamless. Now, we know that we're going to have a doorway right here. That's going to lead into the bathroom. But now we've got some strange things going on with our walls in this bedroom area. So what are we going to do to fix that? Well, first things first, there actually is this wall right here doesn't exist. This is another weird wall that was on the floor plan but isn't actually in the house. So we're going to use the push-pull tool on this and just push the wall back in where it came from. And when we do that, it disappears, right? So I can just get rid of these extra lines here, and we're doing good. So now we've got this wall here. Well, we know that this wall is clearly going to be containing this bathroom inside of it. So we just need to extend this wall over. But are the bathroom dimensions correct yet? Are they actually correct? Well, let's take a quick look at that. The fact of the matter is that this bathroom is still too wide. Now, why is that? This is something that requires a little bit of thought, and you actually need to put on your engineering hat for a second, because if you look at this wall right here, right, this is where our fridge is going to be. And this is where our oven is going to be. And all these appliances need extra things behind them. The fridge needs a water supply. The oven needs one heck of a power supply. You can't fit that in a standard 4.5-inch wall. So this wall here actually needs to be thicker than it is right now to kind of accommodate for all those appliances. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our push-pull tool, and we're going to pull these chunks of wall back out about 1 foot. So we're going to add about 1 foot of thickness to it, like that. There we go. Perfect. So now, and you can see when we do that, this is another instance of things just kind of starting to click together and fall into place. It lines up almost perfectly with this other wall that we drew right here. It's meant to be, clearly. So let's go ahead and fix this wall as well. Now, the first thing you'll notice is it's about 1/2 inch maybe too long. That's just from drawing, we can't be perfect with everything we model. So we're just going to take the push-pull tool and select it and push it back so it lines up perfectly like that. And then we're going to, it's just, maybe 1/4 inch off like this. So I'm actually going to select this face and push it back like this so it lines up there. And then I'm going to push it back another 4.5 inches like there. Okay, and then I'm going to take the other side of the wall and push it back in so that it lines up with these other walls here. And there we go. Perfect. So now all I need to do is use the eraser tool, get rid of these extra lines right here. There we go. Seamless. Now the last thing we need to do to kind of make our house look like it does in the photos with all the walls and everything is this room here is way too big, because one thing you'll notice is that this wall right here that we were working with, where the kitchen sink and the window is, right? There's supposed to be a window right here. But if I draw a window here, which we'll be doing in the next episode, but if I draw a window here and push it back in, you can see the problem is this wall is in the way. This room is too wide. It's also too long, so we need to kind of scale it down a little bit. So we know that by looking at one of these other photos of the house that there's a window right here, but this wall is in the way. So we need to push this wall back. Let me get rid of this extra line here. So how long does this wall right here need to be to accommodate that window? Well, based on my measurements, it's an oddly specific amount. It's 7 feet, 2.5 inches. So I'm going to actually make a guideline here, and I'm going to stretch it out, and I'll type in 7 feet, 2.5 inches, like that. Okay, so that's where this wall actually needs to come out. So you can see it's off by quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this extra line here, so I can treat this whole wall as one big face. And I'm going to pull it back with the push-pull tool. But I can't do it all the way because I've got this wall right here as well. So I'm actually going to pull it back as well, just a little bit, let's say 3 feet, because we're going to be manipulating it as well. So we don't need to worry about it being very accurate right now. So we'll just push this back just to kind of get it out of the way. And then we'll take our wall here, pull it back to line up with that line. But that's where that guideline is where we want our exterior part of the wall to be, not the interior. So I'm going to take it in another 6 inches, and then I'll take the exterior wall here and push it back to that guideline right there. There we go. Perfect. So you can see that's looking really, really good. Now we can get rid of, you see all these weird lines that are left over here. We can go ahead and get rid of those with the eraser tool and just push this whole chunk back in. So now we need to look at the length of this room, because the length of this room isn't quite right either. This room should only be 17 feet long on the outside. So now it is clearly not that, because if I look over here and pull out a guideline right here and type in 17 feet, you can see that is where this wall should be. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the same technique that we were using to move all those walls earlier to push this room back a little bit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little chunk of wall right here and I'm going to pull it back. Oh, let's go 5 feet. And I'll do the same thing over here. Push it back. Now because it's not liking me doing that, I'm going to do the same technique I did earlier where I hit the Option key and push back copy 5 feet. Because then I've got the lines that I need to keep this wall intact. So I can just manually delete these lines. Oh, and you can see it was this weird stuff down in here that was preventing that from working. You can see it's got some weird stuff going on there. But it's still there. So I'm actually going to select these purple faces and I'm going to right-click them and I'm going to choose Reverse Faces. There we go. You always want the white side sticking out because the purple side is the side you're not supposed to see. So we'll do that. I'll go ahead and get rid of these extra weird lines. There we go. Much cleaner. All right, so now we know that we need this wall over here to be pushed back to this line here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push this part of the wall back way more than I need to, just to give myself plenty of room, and I'll push this chunk of the wall back to that guideline. And you can see, again, we got some offset problems. When you're moving walls like this with some really complicated lines, you're going to run into this problem every now and then. But again, just like we did earlier, it's very easy to fix. We'll just use the Option key to push a copy back so that we just get some lines where we need them. Right there. That's where we want it to end. And now I can just take this wall here and just push it down to the bottom and let it disappear. And you can see we've got all kinds of weird lines here because we're manipulating this house so much. So I'll just get rid of those lines and then I'll just redraw one of these lines here to bring back that top face. There we go. So that's looking good. Now we've got this exterior wall very thick right now, so I'm going to go ahead and take another guideline in 6 inches and push this chunk of the wall back like this. Good. And there we go. That's what it should look like. That's the correct dimension for that room. So we made some pretty big changes, actually. Now all we need to do is we're just going to take this area out here, and this porch should only be 4'3", like that. And I'll push it back in. There we go. And then we don't need this extra bit on the side here, so I'm just going to take a guideline out like this and push the rest of this stuff down and out of sight. There we go. All right, so now if you look at the model as it is right now, you can see that it is making a lot more sense, and it's looking a lot more like it does in the actual photos. So this is looking a lot more like the actual house, and this is the kind of thing that you're going to run into. It's pretty much inevitable when you're building something based off of a floor plan. Even if you're measuring something yourself and you're actually in the house or in the building, taking the measurements yourself, there's so much to juggle in your mind. It's inevitable that you're going to have slip-ups somewhere. And the important thing is you need to be able to know how to fix them when they do come up, because you will realize they're there eventually. Things just won't fit together otherwise. But now you can see our house is looking really good. This is a really good place to be right now. And we're ready to start adding our doors and our windows, which is what we will do in our next episode. But until then, be sure to visit our website at www.harwoodpodcast.com. Look at the show notes for this episode of SketchUp, a 3D Toolbox, and you'll find downloads to download the lesson files for this project. You can download the lesson project as it was at the beginning of this episode, and you can also download it as it is right now, the completed version. And that's important because you'll want to be able to look at this and kind of reference back to what we did in this episode, so you can kind of follow along. Also, be sure to fan us up on Facebook at facebook.com/HowardPodcast. You can get behind-the-scenes looks at the network, as well as alerts every time we upload a new show. And also, as always, if you have any questions or comments for me about the show, you can send me an email at Cameron@HarwoodPodcast.com. Until next time, guys, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.